Reading through the Bible in a year, January 17th, Genesis 18, Matthew 17, Nehemiah 7, and Acts chapter 17. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting in the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat, so you can be refreshed, and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered. "Do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seahs of fine flour and knead it and make some bread." Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice, tender calf and gave it to the servant who hurried to prepare it. Then he brought some curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared, and he set them before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. "Where is your wife, Sarah?" they asked him. "There, in the tent," he said. Then the Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." Now Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already old and well advanced in years. Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself, as she thought, "After I am worn out and my master is old, will I now have this pleasure?" Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, I did not laugh." But he said, "Yes, you did laugh." When the men got up to leave, they looked towards Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. And the Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Abraham will surely become a great and powerful nation, and all nations on earth will be blessed through him. For I have chosen him, so that he will direct his children and his household after him, to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord will bring about for Abraham what he has promised for him." Pausing for a moment, I want to make sure we don't lose the notes here. Continuing. Verse 20. Then the Lord said, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin is so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is so bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know." The men turned away and went toward Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Then Abraham approached him and said, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50? I looked away for a second. Again, this happens. You look away for just a moment, and then you got to come back to the text and get lost. Continuing on. Back to verse 24. What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right?" The Lord said, "If I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Then Abraham spoke up again. "Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes, what if the number of the righteous is 5 less than the 50? Will you destroy the whole city because of 5 people? If I find 45 there," he said, "I will not destroy it." Once again he spoke to him. "But what if only 40 are found there?" He said, "For the sake of 40, I will not do it." Then he said, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. What if only 30 can be found there?" Tells me he knows a lot about that city. And he answered, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." Abraham said, "Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, what if only 20 are found there?" He said, "For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it." Then he said, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 are found there?" He answered, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham returned home, probably thinking, look, his nephew's family should certainly have enough righteous people in it to save this entire city. Let's see what happens. Moving on now to Matthew 17. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up on a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as the light. Just then there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, or tents, or tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, a bright cloud enveloped them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Moses representing the law, Elijah representing the prophets. When the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. But Jesus came and touched them. "Get up," he said. "Do not be afraid." They looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. As they were coming down from the mountain, Jesus instructed them, "Do not tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." The disciples asked him, "Well, why then did the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first?" Jesus replied, "To be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but have done to him everything they wished. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist. When they came to the crowd, a man approached Jesus and knelt before him. "Lord, have mercy on my son," he said. "He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him." "Unbelieving and perverse generation," Jesus replied. "How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me." Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy. He was healed from that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, "Why couldn't we drive it out?" He replied, "Because you have so little faith. I tell you the truth. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." When they came together in Galilee, he said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the 3rd day he will be raised to life." The disciples were filled with grief. After Jesus and the disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma tax came to Peter and asked, "Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?" Making sure we don't lose notes here. Continuing on. Peter replied, "Yes, he does." When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked. "From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own sons or from others?" "From others," Peter replied. "Then the sons are exempt," Jesus said to him. "But so that we may not offend them, go to the lake and throw out your line, and take the first fish you catch and open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours." Nehemiah chapter 7. After the wall had been rebuilt, and I had set the doors in place, the gatekeepers and the singers and the Levites were appointed. I put in charge of Jerusalem my brother Hanani, along with Hananiah, the commander of the citadel, because he was a man of integrity and feared God more than most men do. I said to them, "The gates of Jerusalem are not to be opened until the sun is hot. while the gatekeepers are still on duty. Have them shut the doors and bar them. Also, appoint residents of Jerusalem as guards, so at their posts, and some near their own houses. Now the city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and the houses had not yet been rebuilt. So my God put it into my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the common people for registration by families. I found the genealogical record of those who had been the first to return. This is what I found written in there. These are the people from the province who came up from the captivity of the exiles of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. I'm going to restate that. These are the people of the province who came up from the captivity of the exiles whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had taken captive. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own town. In the company of Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Raamiah, Nehemiah, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mizpareth, Bigvai, Nahum, and Baanah. The list of the men of Israel. The descendants of Parosh, 2,172. Of Shephatiah, 372. Of Arah, 652. Of Pahath Moab, through the line of Jeshua in Moab, 2,818. Of Elam, 1,254. Of Zatu, 845. Of Zakai, 760. Of Benui, 648. Of Bebai, 628. Of Asgad, 2,322. Of Adnakam, 667. Of Bigvai, 2,067. Of Adin, 655. 655. Of Ater, through Hezekiah, 98. Of Hashum, 328. Of Bazai, 324. Of Harif, 112. Of Gibeon, 95. The men of Bethlehem and Netophah, 188. Of Anathoth, 128. Of Beth Asmaveth, 42. Of Kiriath Jearim, Kephirah, and Beeroth, 743. Of Ramah and Geba, 621. Of Michmash, 122. Of Bethel and Ai, 52. 123. Of the other Nebo, 52. Of the other Elam, 1,254. Of Hurim, 320. Of Jericho, 345. Of Lod, Hadid, and Ono, 721. And of Sanaa, 3,930. The priests, the descendants of Jediah, through the family of Jeshua. Of Immer, the first one, the priests themselves, 973. Of Immer, 1,052. Of Pashur, 1,247. Of Hurim, 1,017. The Levites, the descendants of Jeshua, through Kadmiel, through the line of Hodaviah, 74. The singers, descendants of Asaph, 148. The gatekeepers, the descendants of Shallum, Ater, Talmon, Akub, Hatita, and Shobai, 138. The temple servants, the descendants of Ziha, Hasupha, Tabaoth, Keros, Sia, Padon, Labana, Hagaba, Shalmai, Hanan, Gedel, Gahar, Raiah, Rezin, Nakoda, Gazam, Uzzah, Paseah, Basai, Meunim, Nephushim, Bakbuk, Hakufa, Harhur, Bazluth, Mahida, Harsha, Barkos, Sisera, Tema, Neziah, and Hatifa. The descendants of the servants of Solomon, the descendants of Sotai, Sophereth, Perida, Jaala, Darkon, Gedel, Shephatiah, Patil, Pokereth Hazabaim, and Ammon. The temple servants and the descendants of the servants of Solomon, 392. The following came up from the towns of Tel Melah, Tel Harsha, Kerub, Adon, and Immer, but they could not show that their families were descended from Israel. The descendants of Deliah, Tobiah, and Nekoda, 642. And from among the priests, the descendants of Hobiah, Hakoz, Barzillai, a man who had married a daughter of Barzillai the Gileadite, and was called by that name. They searched for their family records, but they could not find them, and were so excluded from the priesthood as unclean. The governor, therefore, ordered them not to eat any of the most sacred food until there should be a priest ministering with Urim and Thummim. The whole company numbered 42,360. Besides their 7,337 men servants and maidservants, and they also had 245 men and women singers. There were 736 horses, 245 mules, 435 camels, and 6,720 donkeys. Some of the heads of the families contributed to the work. The governor gave to the treasury 1,000 drachmas of gold, 50 bowls, and 530 garments for priests. Some of the heads of the families gave to the treasury for the work 20,000 drachmas of gold and 2,200 minas of silver. The total given by the rest of the people was 20,000 drachmas of gold, 2,000 minas of silver, and 67 garments for priests. The priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the singers, and the temple servants, along with certain of the people and the rest of the Israelites, settled in their own towns. When the 7th month came, the Israelites had settled in their towns, ... Why does it stop here? Okay. So we touched on this briefly before. The numbers that we have that differentiate between what chapters are where and what verses are where, these didn't come until, I forget when it was. I saw a thing recently that threw me off. Originally, my thought was that it was in the 1400s. Like, that's what I always had. And then I saw something the other day that said, no, it was 600 AD. And now it's confused me. So I got to go and recheck that again. But to that point, excuse me, you're going to find things like this that don't really make sense. So tomorrow, God willing, when we read through the text again, instead of starting here at chapter 8, verse 1, that's halfway through a sentence, we're going to roll back and read through the whole sentence before it, because that reads through everything together. It'll make more sense. Nothing to worry about right now. All of that said, let's move on now to Acts chapter 17. When they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a Jewish synagogue. And as his custom was, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and proving that the Christ had to suffer and rise from the dead. This Jesus I am proclaiming to you is the Christ, he said. Some of the Jews were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, as did a large number of God-fearing Greeks and not a few prominent women. But the Jews were jealous, so they rounded up some bad characters from the marketplace, formed a mob, and started a riot in the city. They rushed to Jason's house in search of Paul and Silas in order to bring them out to the crowd. But when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some of the brothers before the city officials, shouting, "These men who have caused trouble all over the world now have come here, and Jason has welcomed them into his house. They're all denying Caesar's decrees, saying that there is another king, one called Jesus." Heard this. The crowd and the city officials were thrown into turmoil, and they made Jason and the others post bond and let them go. As soon as it was night, the brothers sent Paul and Silas away to Berea. On arriving there, they went into the Jewish synagogue. Now the Bereans were of more noble character than the Thessalonians, for they received the message with great eagerness and examined the Scriptures every day to see if what Paul said was true. Many of the Jews believed, as did a number of prominent Greek women and many Greek men. When the Jews in Thessalonica learned that Paul was preaching the word of God at Berea, they went there too, agitating the crowds and stirring them up. The brothers immediately sent Paul to the coast, but Silas and Timothy stayed at Berea. The men who escorted Paul brought him to Athens, and then left with instructions for Silas and Timothy to join him as soon as possible. While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, now I'm going to take a brief note here. I'm pulling up the rest of the notes here for you, so you have them. Okay. So this might be a tall order to ask this, but if you've ever read what's called a systematic theology, you will understand what Paul is going to go through here as he gives his explanation. Now, we're not there yet, but there's a lot of stuff to begin kind of his the things that he had seen and done and talked to all these people. The important thing to realize is, first, these are people who, for the most part, are very religious, meaning that they worship and they worship and serve the sun, moon, stars, the ocean, the bugs, all of the things they worship individually. In fact, it's such a religious culture that they were worried about offending a god that they may have missed, so they made a statue, an idol, to the unknown god in case they missed one. They didn't want to be in trouble for that. It was a very ecumenical group of people who were they would pride themselves on their knowledge and understanding and learning, great learning. But they were missing so many of the points. And so what Paul's doing is, as he's coming to this town, he's fascinated. He's fascinated by all of these things. And he spends a day or so just observing people. And then he goes and does what he does everywhere else. He preaches the gospel to the people. But understand that for most people, most Christians, you can explain to them who God the Father is, who God the Son is, or the Holy Spirit. We can talk about these things because we understand Christianese. We talk about the Creator God who created the heaven and the earth, and we all know that is our God. But these people worship many things. In the same way, and this is a common problem with Hindus who are evangelized to, and then they say that they now believe in Jesus. What they mean is that they've added Jesus as another one in their pantheon of gods that they continue to worship. So they're going to worship Shiva, they're going to worship all of these others, and also Jesus as well. He was just granted another spot in the cupboard. They put a little idol to him as well. But this doesn't change the fact that they don't understand that he is the only God, and to worship any other God is an affront to him. It's not a true conversion. So what Paul is doing here is he's going to have to explain to these people who don't understand the baseline things about who God is. They understand the concept of a God, but they don't know anything about our God. So he starts over from scratch, and he just straight up explains to them what God is. If you've read through any systematic theologies, you know that all of them have to start, again, systematic theology. All it means is that it systematizes the study of God, right? Who is God? What is God? What are the attributes of God? What does it mean when we talk about God? What is it that God rules over? Where does our God fit into all of the other gods in the universe as far as his reign and authority? Does God care about nations? Does he care about people? Does he care about only a certain type of people, or only people from a certain region? These are all questions that are asked and answered in systematic theology books. So we're going to see, as we go through the rest of chapter 17 here, Paul's experience in Athens and how he speaks to the people themselves. Important, and it's helpful, especially if you have an idea in yourself. Maybe the Holy Spirit's leading you to want to be an evangelist. This is a good idea to read through this and to understand how it is that he's reaching a people who know nothing about God. Verse 16, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogues with the Jews and the God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happened to be there. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to dispute with him. two entirely different realms. Epicureans are people who believe that in order to truly know things, you must engage in all aspects of the things that happen. Nothing is kept from them. They pursue everything with full gusto. Learning, absolutely. Anything that they decide that they want to do, even their sexual appetites, literally men, women, little girls, boys, it was weird, but nothing was to be kept from them, and they were to be enabled to pursue these things to see if they find meaning in any of it, right? I know, super gross, but it's, much older times. So those are the Epicureans. The Stoic philosophers are the exact opposite of that. These are the people who, in many cases, were throwing everything off. They were looking for meaning in having nothing. Many of them wouldn't even eat food that was given to them. The only food that they would eat is what they would find in the garbage after it's been tossed out by someone. So they know nobody actually wants it. It's that they would go and eat. And so these are the two different ditches of the full breadth of the philosophy in this time. And these are the ones who are disputing with him. Now, some of them asked, what is this babbler trying to say? Why do they call him a babbler? Because he speaks in a foreign language. In the same way that barbarians were called barbarians, simply because when you listen to their language, they were Germanic languages, it sounded like they were saying bar, 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 bar. That's why they were called barbarians. Others remarked, he seems to be advocating foreign gods. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. And they took him. And they brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus, where they said to him, may we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we want to know what they mean. Now, all the Athenians and foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. Paul then stood up, the meeting of the Areopagus, and said, men of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. Now what you worship as something unknown, I am going to proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, who does not live in temples built by hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything, because he himself gives all men life and breath and everything else. See? Who is this God? Where does he exist? How do you serve him? Does he require sacrifices and things so that he can eat? Right? From one man he made every nation of men, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he determined the times set for them and the exact places where they should live. God did this so that men would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him. So he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by man's design and skill. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man whom he has appointed. He has given proof to this. Proof of this, to all men by raising him from the dead. When they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some of them sneered, but others said, we want to hear you again on this subject. At that, Paul left the council. A few men became followers of Paul and believed. Among them were Dionysius, a member of the Areopagus, Also, a woman named Damaris, and a number of others. That is it. That is all the reading and all of the notes for today. God willing, we'll be back tomorrow. Hold.